the Prophet ﷺ told us that actions are by their intentions, and each person shall have whatever they intended. So the basis of the reward for your action is not merely what you do, but rather it is above all what you sought through your action. In terms of what you do, your action has to be sound. Your action has to be sound, it has to correspond to the divine command, and for it to be fully pleasing to Allah, it must be in accordance with the prophetic guidance, right? The specific prophetic example, and the broad guidance that the Prophet ﷺ told us of what makes actions pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that's just one part of the action. The other part of it, and that is what gives it its reality, is what you sought through your action, your sincerity. And sincerity is acting for the sake of Allah, whether it be in one's worship or in any other act of life. The intention that is pleasing to Allah is one, which is to act for His sake. But this meaning of acting for His sake is not just an on and off switch that I acted for His sake or no I didn't, but rather it is a matter that is above all a turning of the heart to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the extent to which you turn your heart and you seek Allah, you seek to draw closer to Allah, you seek His pleasure, His love, His acceptance, His closeness. To that extent will you be granted. Each person shall have whatever they sought. Looking at the prophetic teachings, the scholars tell us that one should strive to multiply one's intentions. But what does this mean? It means that in order to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, one also expresses in one's intention how one wishes to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the intention, the absolute intention is one. I'm acting for the sake of Allah. Why do you go to visit your parents? For one reason, to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, how do you plan to seek the pleasure of Allah? That's where the multiple intentions come in. So for example, when visiting parents, one would intend. And the sad thing is that most of us do really great things in life without even decent intentions, right? It's just a sort of GSB, a general state of blah. Rather, the intelligent believer, before they act, they turn their heart to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a deep sense that, oh Allah, I'm doing this for your sake, right? You're doing it for the sake of Allah. One directs one's heart to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is what places light in one's actions, and it transforms one's conduct. So one says, for example, this is the saying of the heart, right? The tongue may help the heart, right, to help you focus your intention, but it is not sought in itself. So, for example, visiting one's parents, that you're visiting your parents for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking His pleasure, His closeness. And then the multiple intentions come in to express how you want to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by being dutiful to my parents, right? By fulfilling the rights of my parents, by having birr al-walidain, by being righteous to my parents, and intending that you will express that birr, that righteousness, which the Prophet ﷺ defined as good character, by upholding good character in word and deed with them, in acting respectfully and lovingly and caringly, and responding to whatever they say or do in a loving and respectful manner. You intend to serve your parents. You intend to make your parents pleased, to bring happiness to their heart. You intend to uphold the prophetic character in your dealings with them, and so on. And there may be specific elements as well, that I want to help them with their household duties, or help clean up their house, or whatever else, right? Similarly, why are you studying? Well, because I want to learn my deen. No, you're studying for one reason, which is to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your religious studies, right? I want to study, seek Islamic knowledge, to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How? In order to be able to obey, to enter into a state of obedience to the divine command, in order to be able to fulfill my duty to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in order to be able to act according to the sunnah, in order to benefit myself and to be pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way that I am and in the way that I conduct myself, in order to be able to gain this knowledge of prophetic guidance and to understand it, so that when ready, I'm able to convey it to others, and so on. Right? In every action, even simple mundane matters, like for example, let's say you like good coffee, right? So, why do you drink your coffee? You don't just drink your coffee just because you like it. No, you drink your coffee seeking the pleasure of Allah. How? Right? You drink your coffee seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of, in appreciation that firstly as an act of faith, that you recognize that this is a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in appreciation of His blessings, in thankfulness for His blessings. Right? That verily Allah loves that one of you drink a sip of something and then they praise Allah for it. It is beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for one to do so. So this is just one of many intentions that one may have. Okay? Just one of many intentions that one may have. And one can have other intentions too, right? To give one's body its due, right? In a manner that is permissible, and so on. So even mundane matters, why do you put on your shoes? Seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How? In worldly matters, one of the keys is thankfulness. The other is to use the permissible matter, putting on your shoes, eating ice cream, hanging out with friends, to do these worldly things. One, out of thankfulness. Number two, out of to do them in a manner that is pleasing to Allah, to uphold the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ regarding these matters. So, for example, in putting on your shoes, if you do it with a sense of pleasing Allah, then you can truly, much more easily, fulfill the sunnah, which is to put on your right foot first, put on your right shoe first. If your shoes require tying up, or some kind of effort in putting them on, then the sunnah is that one not put them on standing. Rather, one sits down, or at least one leans against something, right? Because it's not dignified, right? Someone's on one leg and wobbling around. So this is why we multiply our intentions. These multiple intentions are not really intentions, in the sense that this is what you're seeking itself. You're seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are expressions, these are branches of intention, right? The core intention is one. You're seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His pleasure, His love, His closeness, His acceptance, right? And these multiple intentions are the expressions of how you want to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, they say that سُمِّيَ الْإِنسَانُ إِنسَانًا لِأَنَّهُ يَنْسَى, that the human being has been called human, insan, because they're given to nisyan, to forgetfulness. So many of the scholars have said that it's good to write out these intentions, to reflect on the major, the significant things that you do in your life, right? Especially those things that are repeated regularly, whether on a daily basis or on a weekly basis. Like, why do you go to your study circle or your gathering of dhikr? People just show up and they lose out. Not on entire reward, but on much of what they could benefit. So many of them have said that it's good to reflect on, why am I doing these things, and write out one's intention, and to keep track of it in writing. One of my friends, Sheikh Ahmad Snobar, on top of his computer, because he's a scholar of hadith, and he spends most of his day studying the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ and researching it. He had on top of his computer, like on a piece of paper, about on the wall, a statement of his intention. I intend, through the study of the science of hadith, to seek the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that was the expression of his intentions. And many of the ulama suggested keeping a notebook of the major things you do, and specifying therein what your intention is in them, and to reflect on these matters, right? To reflect, and maybe to consult, right? And this is and it helps you think, how do I seek the pleasure of Allah? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of those who seek Him in all that we do, and may we find Him in every moment of our life, that we attain the station of spiritual excellence, that we worship Allah as though we behold Him. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه غفور رحيم.